WCCC today to hear the oral history of Gary Solomon. And we're going to start by asking Gary, tell me about your family. Where did your parents live? Where did your grandparents live? Where did they come from?
Well, they came from Europe, and my great-grandfather was born in Hempstead, Texas, back in 1880s, 1890s. And he migrated to Fort Worth, Texas, where he had his family there. And that grandmother, paternal grandmother, came from St. Louis. And my father was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1924. And he married my mother, who was born in Dallas. She was born in 1929 in Forest Avenue High School. And they were married before the migration from the South Dallas to the North Dallas. And we lived in Fort Worth, Texas, where my grandfather opened a shoe store in 1935. It was called the Red Goose Shoe Store, and it still remains there, although it's not a shoe store anymore. But it's a historical landmark in downtown Fort Worth now.
Mm-hmm. And what about your parents? What did they do for a living?
My father worked in the shoe store, and my mother worked in General Dynamics and supported maintenance engineering for the Air Force and the General Dynamics, the contractor for the military.
Mm-hmm. And are you an only child? Do you have brothers, sisters?
I have a brother, Hal, who's younger than me, and a sister, Wendy, who is younger than me. They both live here in the city. Hal works at a bank, and Wendy, my sister Wendy, is now retired.
Mm-hmm. And so you, as a child, you lived in Fort Worth and went to school there?
I went all through school in Fort Worth, and we went to Westcliff High School, McLean Junior High School, and McLean Junior High School and Paschal High School, with the vast majority of the Jewish population that we all did the same thing.
Okay, let's go back a second. And you were born in what year?
1950.
1950, okay. And when you were in school, what kind of activities, etc., were you interested in?
I always liked science and math and sports. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just active in various organizations and enjoyed those quite a bit. We played baseball. I was on the baseball team, and we enjoyed it. We had a good time in Fort Worth. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. What was the neighborhood like where you lived then?
The neighborhood was a middle-class neighborhood, and we all knew each other. We played in the streets together. We played in the neighborhoods together. I rode my bicycle to school, and we played a lot. That was a fun time to play. This was when I grew up. There were really no malls, and the big activity was downtown Fort Worth. And certainly, as soon as I was able, they put me to work in the shoe store, and I would go down on Friday after school, and Saturday we would work until 9 o'clock Friday night, and on Saturdays we'd come down and we'd open the store at 8:30 or 9, and we'd stay there till 9 at night. So it was an easy 12-hour day for us.
An easy one, right? What about Jewish affiliations during your childhood? Did your family belong to a synagogue?
Yes, we belonged to both of them. And there was a Reform, Temple Bethel, and a conservative, Ahava Sholem, and we were both of them. And I was a member of Temple Youth, and I was a member of USY. We also belonged to the Jewish Community Center in Fort Worth, for which we really, we had a lot of fun out there. We stayed there a lot. I was very active in BBYO as well, and a lot of community service organizations. A lot of projects, and a lot of activity. It kept us quite busy. We liked it.
Mm-hmm. And did you go to Hebrew school, Sunday school?
We did. We went to Hebrew school at Ahava Sholem, and at one point we switched over to Temple, and we finished up our Sunday school education at Temple.
Mm-hmm. And what interactions did your parents have with the Jewish community?
I remember that my mother used to bake a lot. It seemed that was a very popular thing to do, that the ladies would go down and cook for Shabbos and major holidays, and she would cook a lot. They would make sandwiches for the poor, I remember, and mostly those kinds of things. I don't remember a lot, but we certainly celebrated all the Jewish holidays, decorated the house for Hanukkah and Sukkot and so forth. And we had that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of interactions did you have with the broader community?
I would say that most of our interactions were associated and strengthened through our Jewish, we started in our Jewish roots and branched out in various projects to the community, whether it was feeding the poor or going to one of the orphanages that was one of our pet projects, or finding toys for the children's hospital. Most of our interaction with the general community was through our community projects, through our Jewish organizations.
And how about in high school? What kind of things did you like to do?
Oh goodness, we continued our sports and we continued our projects basically. BBYO became a very important part of our life, as we all could drive in high school, and we did. We drove all over, and I remember picking up the younger members because they couldn't drive and bringing them to projects and to meetings and so forth, and that's what I remember.
Mm-hmm. And was there a lot of contact between the people in Fort Worth and the people in Dallas at that time?
Well, that's an interesting question. There was a lot of rivalry between the leaders of Fort Worth and leaders of Dallas. We had family in Dallas, so we would come a lot. I remember that to go shopping in Fort Worth, you did not have to dress up. To go shopping in Dallas, you did have to dress up a little bit more. I went off to college in 1969 to the University of Texas. And when I graduated and came back to Dallas to go to dental school, there was new terms that I hadn't heard before, like Metroplex. Before I left, the Fort Worth television stations would not have reporters in Dallas and vice versa, but now they all had reporters in each other's cities, and it was one big metropolis when I came back. It was an interesting evolution.
And what were your interests in studying when you were in college?
Science, physics, chemistry, and biology. That was my impetus to get into dental school. And I did research. I did molecular research in the biology department and had a laboratory, and that's where I studied. I was married when I was 20, so I didn't really have to worry about a lot of social things. I could study a lot, and that was very helpful.
We'll go back to that in a minute. What made you decide to go to dental school?
I knew that I wanted to be a doctor when I was young, and I think my childhood dentist was a role model. Mm-hmm. Nice, gentle person, always took care of people, and I think that was in the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm. So you went to dental school immediately after?
Right. I went through UT Austin about 3.5 years and got into Baylor Dental School, and I just came right from Austin to Dallas, and my wife Rosie, got a job with the DISD. She's a teacher, and it was really fun. She got a job in the administration building, which was very close to the dental school, so we could actually get by with one car back then and save money. It was a lot of fun back there, and so I got through dental school in 3 years, and I got a residency in general practice at the VA hospital, and that was fun, and it just continued the things that I love, which is science and chemistry and biology, those kinds of things.
Okay, now let's go back to the interesting stuff. How did you meet your wife?
Well, that's an interesting story. Actually, we were in a carpool together in preschool in Fort Worth. And, so you drift apart because I just remember her from back then. In junior high and BBYO days is when we got back together and started dating, and it just blossomed from there. And so we were childhood sweethearts. We stayed together in college, got married. I was still in college when we got married, and that's how that started. We've just been together ever since.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And when were you married?
we were married in Fort Worth, Ahava Sholem. It was a large wedding, and let's see, we will celebrate our 40th anniversary here this summer, and you know, it just flies fast.
So you were married in
Oh goodness, I have to
72?
think. Yeah, 72,
Mhm.
71.
71? 71, okay. Math is not my strong point. And do you and Rosie have children?
We have two. We have two children. We have our oldest is Jennifer. Jennifer, very special, very social child. As we grew up, if you were at a party or a function and they had children there, she would be holding these children. So Jennifer grew up to be a special ed teacher, and she's here. She's married. She has two children of her own, and you know, she's a special child. My second daughter is Julie, and as a young child, she would argue with me when we played Candyland. Now, her arguments were well-founded, so I let her win, and Julie grew up to be a lawyer. So Julie's here, and she has one child.
Mhm. And let's go back. You were in dental school, and you were in Dallas, and you decided to stay in Dallas, or did you want to go back to Fort Worth? What happened there?
Okay, as we went through dental school, and as the graduation loomed closer and closer, we decided that we liked Dallas, and it's close enough to our parents in Fort Worth that we decided to stay in Dallas. The residency helped cement that decision because that was here in Dallas also. And so we stayed in Dallas, and I got a part-time job during my residency, and after that I just transitioned into private practice. So it just kind of flowed just very, very smoothly.
Mm-hmm. And where did you live when you first moved to Dallas?
Let's see, when we first moved to Dallas, we lived near the White Rock Lake area, because it was kind of close to the dental school. You can shoot down, I think, one of the streets down there. It was a beautiful area to walk around also, and most of the time we were down in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Apartments to, you know, various apartments and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And after that, when you opened your own practice?
After that, we bought our first house in East Richardson. Can't really recall the date, 78 or 79, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of Jewish people over there. There was pockets of large Jewish community. That was always important to us, to stay within Jewish communities. And we were active at the JCC. Our kids were active. They had I got on the Cultural Arts Committee here at the JCC, and we had this very small budget, and I remember they got a new head of cultural arts here, and he had grandiose ideas, and he talked to me about them, and his name was Richard Zalman. I said, sounds like a good idea, let's do this. So we increased our budget from, I think, $1,000 to about $10,000, and we brought Israeli singers and dancers in, and it was a big push, and it was a very successful program here.
Mm-hmm. And when your children were growing up, what was the Jewish community like in Dallas?
I think that it was a fun group for us. We have a lot of friends. My kids, like I said earlier, were very social. They had a lot of friends. And Julie started at Solomon Schechter School and transferred after about the 3rd grade to public school. Jennifer was, Solomon Schechter School hadn't really gelled yet, since she was mostly in public school. Again, they were very social, had a lot of friends, and they stayed very active. It was really, I think both of them liked their childhood. They had a lot of fun with their childhood. And we had moved from East Richardson to near Hillcrest and Campbell Roads, which was another big Jewish area. And they could walk to school if they wanted to, and they all went to Brinfield Elementary School, which so many of the kids did, and Park Hill Elementary and Pierce High School. So they had this big group, and they all went to school together. And I mean, it was a fun time.
Mm-hmm. And about this time was the beginning of the migration of the Russians out of the former Soviet Union to the United States, and I know you were active in that movement, and do you want to tell us a little something about that?
Sure. In the late 1980s, about 1986, 1987, the Soviet Union announced that it was going to allow Jews to leave. And they trickled in at first. In Dallas, we saw small groups, and the community really sprang into action to try to resettle them. Congregation Shearith Israel had their own resettlement program back in those days. Then in 1989, about September, October, the groups became larger and the waves came faster. In the 1990s, in the early 1990s, the floodgates really opened, and thousands of Soviets came into our country, and they really came all over the world. Instantly, dentists and physicians and other professionals sprang into action to help resettle them. Alpha Omega is an international dental fraternity, and the local Dallas chapter sprang into action. I was handed the responsibility to organize this effort, and what we did, we triaged hundreds and hundreds of people. We sought out offices in Medical City, Dallas. We used the offices of Dr. Marty Weinberg, Dr. Jim Reisman, and Dr. Kevin McBride. I had found over 30 dentists who were volunteered to help treat these Soviet Jews as they came over here. We triaged, and the Jewish Family Service was fantastic. They brought busloads of Soviets here. They had translators and transportation. And I organized a series or a system by which we prioritized their dental need. And as we worked them through the system, on those Sunday mornings, we used Sunday mornings because the Medical City Dallas was almost vacant, but we sure filled it up when we were there. Interesting story, a side story. The Jewish Family Service would provide us with translators, and so we could translate with the folks. I had assigned to me a teenager who spoke beautiful English, and during the time she was very interested in the x-rays and what I was doing and so forth, so I asked her parents if they would let her come work in my office when they got settled, and so they did. So her name was Masha Sapovnikov. She came to work for me in my dental office. Masha, after a time, went on to become a registered dietitian at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. Later, she applied to Baylor Dental School and became a dentist, and her office is still here in Plano. But that was an aside. Going back to the resettlement and to the triage at Medical City, after we had done all that, I had rotations of dentists, and so as the need came up and we would rotate to the dentist, the Jewish Family Service would provide transportation. It became obvious that we needed more money for laboratory work, and so I wrote grant proposals, and the Zell Foundation was fantastic, as they responded each and every time to my request. And as these folks came, and the dentists all provided their work for free, their offices were for free, but they needed some extra money to pay the laboratory bills, and so the Zell Foundation was fantastic for that. Next, I gave lectures to the Jewish Family Service to the immigrants as they came in, and interestingly enough, one of the most common questions was, do we need to boil the water here in Dallas before we brush our teeth or before we drink with it or eat with it? And it was an interesting time there. The next thing that came up was that we recognized that Soviet dentistry was inferior to ours, and we had to overcome a lot of that. We also discovered that they put gold in the front teeth, and this gold work was limiting their abilities to get jobs and get well-paying jobs. And so what we did, I organized the next program to remove the gold from their front teeth and put white in their teeth so that they could get better paying jobs and get integrated into the society a little easier. And so that went very well too. Now it's 2011, and the Soviet immigration experience is behind us. The Jewish dentists of Alpha Omega really stand now assisting the Jewish Family Service in any way we can. We still treat anybody they send us for free, and we take care of them. Currently, there are people who have outlived their money and outlived their savings, and they still have needs. And so behind the scenes, we still take care of them.
Has the current economic situation affected that as well?
It has actually affected it dramatically. We have seen a bit of an increase. There was a lull prior to 2008, and after when the recession hit in 2008, we started to see more and more of this. And people are living longer, and they're running out of their money. So we step up to the plate, and like I say, behind the scenes, we just take care of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a short history between 1986 and 2011 of the Dallas Jewish Dentists.
Right. And have you been active in other organizations in Dallas as well?
Yes, I have. Over the years, I have been involved with the JCC and their synagogue. I have been involved with American Jewish Committee. I have been involved with studying Torah. I mean, all these years at the various congregations, and you know, I went to Israel with one of the tours, and we stay active.
Mm-hmm. And you're a member of?
Currently a member of a congregation, Shereth Israel. We have a Havarah of about 20 of us that we have been together for, goodness, I would say over 20 years now. And we have monthly or more meetings, and these meetings, and it's a fascinating the way they put the Havarahs together through the synagogue, because they grouped us together by our children's ages. The commonality of the group was our children, and that has sustained the group for all these many years. And there's a couple of other Havarah groups, and we have meetings together, and now there's a melding of the groups, and it's nice because we still continue the things that I did in high school about making food for the poor. We still do that as a group even today, as groups, and making shalach mano baskets and taking it to Golden Acres and so forth. So we still find ourselves involved with the community.
Mm-hmm. And now you've been kind of a mentor then to many of the dentists in the area. How do you conduct that role?
Well, I love to teach, and I volunteered in the graduate department at the dental school, and I have taught down there, and I was on the admissions committee for the dental school, and I really like to mentor. I like to teach. I like to encourage. I like to provide energy into an organization, and I mean, I still do that. People come to me, and it's just fine. I've been on the board of directors of the Academy of General Dentistry, and various organizations. I stand ready to help whenever I can.
And now that the Soviet era has more or less passed, do you have any feedback again from how all this is going 20 years later?
I see people periodically that I helped over time, and it's fun to catch up to find out what they're doing now and how they have integrated into American society, how their children have grown up, and how their children have married. And some of them are still my patients currently, and it's the cycle of life as we just keep going and going and helping each other.
Tell me about your family today.
Today, we have my parents have passed away. My father-in-law has passed away. My mother-in-law remains with us. We have her at the Legacy, and we see her every day. My daughters see her most every day, and we bring the grandchildren up. I mean, this is part of this cycle of life that we have to keep going. And we have Shabbos at our house, or one of the kids' house, every Friday night, and it's something we have maintained since they were little. And I think, I don't know whether Shabbos keeps us or we keep Shabbos, but it's a tradition that we keep going. Mm-hmm. And we celebrate all the holidays, and that's what we do.
And tell me about your grandchildren.
Oh, goodness. The oldest is Micah. He is currently 7 years old, very athletic, very bright kid. And I used to pick him up every Friday afternoon from his school, and we used to, for I guess from when he was about 18 months till he was about 5 or 6 years old, and we would go to the mall, and I would talk to him, and we would play games together, and it was a neat bonding experience that we had. He now plays soccer, and he plays computer games, and he stays very active. His sister is Ellie, and she's a delightful girl who's just now following in her brother's footsteps in soccer and sports and so forth. And she's a fun kid. She's like her mother, very social, always excited, full of energy. She's a great little child as well. And Julie's got one son, Asher, who is 2 years old, goes to Levine Academy at Solomon Schechter. And he's picking up in their footsteps too. He's playing basketball and soccer, and it's really a lot of fun to watch these kids play.
It sure is.
Oh, it sure is.
And as you were developing your career, did you have role models?
I had a lot of role models actually, and I selected them. My role models began, I think, as my teachers at school. The ones I found qualities in my teachers and my rabbis that I admired, and I picked out certain qualities, mostly from my teachers that I admired. Business leaders. I remember when I was, I probably was 9 or 10 years old, and my mother came to me and she said, Vice President Lyndon Johnson's going to speak in my office tonight. Would you like to go? And so I said, well, sure. So I went, and I don't remember what he spoke about because it was rather dry for a 9-year-old. But afterwards I went up, and this big looming person, he's a giant of a man, and he shook my hand. And however a 9-year-old shakes hands was very meek and timid. He said, son, let me show you how to shake a hand. So he grabbed my hand, and he grabbed it, and he said, this is how you shake a hand. And it was an experience that I have never forgotten. So it was a lot of, a magnificent moment.
And what are you most proud of that you've done?
Oh, I would say I'm most proud of my children, the way my wife and I have created an environment for my kids that they can grow and expand and develop their own gifts and talents, and they have. And I think I'm most proud of that because that took 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year of working. You can never let up. I think I'm second most proud of my grandchildren because I do the same thing for them. As tired as I may be, if they ask me to get up and play or something, I get up and play because it's important to be involved and active with their lives and continue to be a role model to them.
Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't talked about?
I just thank the Jewish Historical Society for what you do. You do a magnificent service to the community, and I'm proud to be part of it, and I'm proud to be here today, and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.